There comes a moment in life when silence is no longer healing. When the things we carried quietly, the questions we buried, and the truths we were afraid to speak begin to rise to the surface. Not because we want attention, but because we want freedom. This is a space for the honest conversations, the ones about faith, the ones about relationships, the ones about healing, the ones about the parts of life many of us carry quietly. I'm Dr. Bertina Else, and this podcast is for the ones who have been strong for everyone else. This is a space where we slow down, where we reflect, where we allow ourselves to acknowledge what we've been carrying. Because many of us have learned how to function without ever learning how to process. Here, we talk about the questions people often keep to themselves, the experiences that shape us, and the courage it takes to live in truth. Because sometimes the strongest thing a person can do is tell the truth about their journey. In this series, we're going to talk about something many people experience, but very few people talk about openly. What happens when the strong one gets tired? What happens when the person who encourages everyone else needs encouragement? What happens when loyalty keeps you connected to things that quietly wound you? And how do you find your way back to a faith that isn't built on performance, but on authentic connection with God? Today, we're starting with the foundation, the identity of the strong one. Because before we talk about boundaries, before we talk about healing, before we talk about ministry and calling, we have to understand the role many of us stepped into without even realizing it. The role of being the one who carries everything. So if you've ever been the one who kept going when others fell apart, if you've ever been the one who held the family together, if you've ever been the one people depended on spiritually, emotionally, or relationally, this conversation is for you. Welcome to Unapologetic Finally, where we stop pretending, start reflecting, and learn how to live with faith, honesty, and courage. So take a breath, settle into this moment, and let's begin. Let's talk about the strong one. In this first episode of Unapologetic Finally, we're talking about the strong one in the room, the person everyone relies on, but few people truly see. My personal story. There have been moments in my own life where I realized I was showing up for everyone else, but I hadn't really stopped to ask myself what I needed. People know the strength you give them, but they don't always know the weight you carry. There are conversations I've never had with anyone about moments that crossed a boundary, words that were spoken in a space where I expected integrity, in a setting that was supposed to be spiritual. And for a moment, I froze. Not because I didn't recognize what happened, but because I did. I felt it. That discomfort, that pause in my spirit, that quiet question in my mind. Did that really just happen? But then something else happened. The strong one showed up. The part of me that knows how to keep things together. The part of me that protects the environment. the part of me that avoids disruption. And I told myself, I'm not going to make this bigger than it needs to be. I don't want to cause confusion. I'll just move forward. And I did. I kept showing up. I kept serving. I kept carrying responsibility. But something shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly. Because even though I moved forward, the moment didn't leave me. It stayed in the back of my mind, filed away, unspoken, unprocessed. And over time, I made a decision, not out loud, but internally. I decided to step away, not because I was weak, but because something in me recognized that what I experienced didn't align with who I was. And maybe I never addressed it. Maybe I never had the conversation. Maybe I never said what I felt. But I walked away. And here's the truth many people don't say out loud. Walking away doesn't mean nothing happened. It means something did. And when you walk away, you choose peace. You choose distance. You choose to protect yourself, even if you didn't fully process why at the time. Because that's what strong people do. They move forward. But strength can become lonely if you're always the one holding everything together. And there's a person in almost every room who quietly holds everything together. Not the loudest person, not always the most visible person, the one people depend on. The one who knows what to say when things fall apart. The one who listens, encourages, and somehow keeps moving forward, even when their own life feels heavy. And if we're honest, many times that person doesn't even realize when they stepped into that role. It just became who they are. But have you ever noticed that the person everyone depends on is often the person nobody checks on? The one who holds the family together, the one who people call when their life falls apart, the one who prays for everybody else. They're the one who keeps the peace when tension rises. They are the mediator, the encourager, the stabilizer. People call that person strong. They are the strong one. But what happens when the strong one gets tired? What happens when the person who has been holding everything together starts to feel like something inside of them is unraveling? Strength has a side that people rarely see. And what we don't always talk about is the hidden weight that comes with it. The expectations to always be steady, the pressure to always have the answer, the responsibility to always show up. And the silence about what hurt you, the silence about what didn't feel right, the silence about the moments you didn't have time to process because life kept moving. Sometimes strength is not loud. Sometimes strength is quiet. Sometimes strength is survival. Strength is powerful. But sometimes strength can also become a place where we carry more than we were ever meant to hold alone. The strong one usually learns something very early in life. Strong people don't fall apart quickly. Strong people don't make things harder for others. Strong people keep going. So they carry things quietly. They carry the family tension. They carry the leadership pressure. They carry the emotional weight of relationships. They carry ministry expectations. And sometimes they carry wounds that no one even knows exist. Not because they're hiding, but because they've learned how to survive by keeping things moving and keeping them hidden. And if you're listening right now and something inside of you is saying, that's me, then this episode is especially for you. Because the truth is, being the strong one can be both a gift and a burden. It can make you dependable, resilient, and capable of helping others through some of the hardest moments of their lives. But if you're not careful, strength can slowly turn into silence. Silence about the things that hurt you. Silence about the boundaries that were crossed. Silence about the exhaustion you feel from always being the one who holds everything together. And what happens when the person who fixes everything quietly begins asking questions like, why do I stay connected to people who hurt me? Why do I carry so much alone? Why does everyone come to me, but I rarely feel like I can go somewhere or have somewhere to go? These are not easy questions, but they are honest ones. And here on Unapologetic Finally, honesty matters. I want you to pause for a moment and be honest with yourself. Where in your life have you been strong, but also tired? Where have you been carrying something that you never gave yourself permission to process? You don't have to answer out loud. Just acknowledge it. Healing rarely begins with pretending everything is fine. Healing begins when we finally say the things we've been carrying privately for a long time. Let's talk about something many people live with but rarely name: the identity of the strong one. If you've ever been called the strong one, it probably didn't happen because you announced it. It happened because life slowly trained you to become that person. And sometimes you don't even realize when it became your identity. You just know that people expect you to be okay. People expect you to handle things. People expect you to show up. And after a while, you stop asking yourself if you're okay, because you've gotten used to being the one who makes sure everyone else is. The strong one is usually the one who fixes problems. When conflict shows up, they step in. When people feel confused, they bring clarity. When situations start falling apart, they try to hold things together. They're the one people call when something goes wrong, because somewhere along the way, others learn something about them. If anyone can handle it, they can. But fixing problems is only one part of it. The strong one also learns how to absorb emotional pain. They listen to everyone else's struggles. They comfort people through heartbreak. They encourage people through doubt. They pray for people when life feels unbearable. And over time, they become the person who carries emotional weight that was never fully theirs to carry. Another characteristic of the strong one is that they protect others from chaos. When tension rises in a family, they smooth it over. When conflict threatens a ministry or a workplace, they try to stabilize it. They become the emotional shock absorber in environments that could easily explode. But here's something that happens quietly, often. While they are protecting everyone else from chaos, no one realizes the chaos they are holding inside. Now, let me give you a few truths, and I want you to sit with each one. You can be strong and still need support. You can love people and still create boundaries. You can serve God and still need healing. You can carry responsibility and still deserve rest. These are not contradictions. These are truths. Now let's talk about something that people rarely discuss when they talk about strength. The hidden cost of being the strong one. Because strength looks admirable from the outside, people admire it. People rely on it. People celebrate it. But strength can slowly turn into something else if it is never balanced with honesty and healing. Strength can become emotional isolation. Not because the strong one pushes people away, but because the strong one becomes very skilled at carrying things internally. Over time, they learn certain survival habits. They learn how to bury pain. Something happens that hurts deeply, a betrayal, a boundary cross, a moment that leaves them unsettled. But instead of stopping everything to process it, the strong one quietly says to themselves, I'll deal with it later. And sometimes later never comes. So the moment gets buried. Then they learn how to compartmentalize experiences. They take painful moments and place them in a mental drawer. They close the drawer. They continue functioning. They continue serving. They continue helping everyone else. Because life still needs to move forward. Responsibility still exists. People still depend on them. So the strong one becomes very good at moving forward without processing what happened. From the outside, it looks like resilience, but inside, something else may be happening. The heart is quietly storing experiences that were never given space to heal. Scripture reminds us of this truth in Psalms 34:18. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. That means God is not just close to visible pain. He is close to hidden pain. The pain you didn't talk about, the moments you buried, the things you told yourself you would deal with later. God saw it then, and He sees it now. Even the things no one else ever acknowledged. And listen, after a while, if you've been the strong one long enough, another question begins to surface. Not loudly, not all at once, but quietly in reflective moments. Maybe late at night when the house is quiet, maybe during prayer, maybe during a moment when you finally have space to think about your own life. And the question sounds something like this. Why do I stay attached to things that hurt me? Why do I keep showing up in situations that leave me emotionally drained? Why do I continue to give loyalty to people who have crossed boundaries? Why do I keep carrying weight that no one asked me to carry? These are not questions of weakness. These are questions of awakening. Because when the strong one begins asking these questions, something important is happening. Awareness is beginning. At some point, strength must learn boundaries, because without boundaries, strength begins to cost you more than it should. I want to say that again. At some point, strength must learn boundaries, because without boundaries, strength begins to cost you more than it should. So before we close today's episode, take a moment to sit with what you heard. Sometimes the most powerful change in our lives doesn't begin with answers. It begins with awareness. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you recognize what you've been carrying, you begin to ask different questions. Do I want to keep living like this? Do I want to keep carrying this? And sometimes that awareness feels uncomfortable, because now you have to decide if you're ready to do something different. If you've been the strong one, the one who keeps going, the one people depend on, the one who quietly holds everything together, I want you to hear something right now. God sees you. You may have learned how to carry things quietly, but God never asked you to carry them alone. Once you see what you've been carrying, give yourself permission to process it honestly. And as we get ready to close, this is what I want to ask God for you. God, for the one who has been carrying quietly, for the one who has been strong for everyone else, for the one who feels tired but keeps going, remind them that they are not alone. Remind them that you see them. Remind them that they don't have to carry everything by themselves anymore. Give them the courage to be honest, the strength to release what they've been holding, and the peace to trust you with what they cannot control. If this conversation resonated with you, I invite you to share this episode with someone who might need to hear it too. And if you haven't already, follow Unapologetic Finally so you don't miss future conversations, because healing, faith, and purpose are journeys, and you don't have to walk them alone. So until next time, keep growing, keep seeking, and keep living your truth with courage.